YouTube Live. I guess YouTube's going to force me to go vertical today with the camera shot. Normally go horizontal. I can't get it figured out. The way I get it to normally work's not working. But let's not spend time on that. This whole episode, we've had a trilogy now the last 3 days. When you look at Arkansas Razorbacks basketball, I started 2 days ago on Tuesday putting out my top 20 games on Arkansas's completed 31 game schedule. We now know the 13 non-conference opponents, 18 league, and we went through a lot of that, those matchups, filling in those blanks on Tuesday. Yesterday, I did my first SEC Power rankings exactly 8 weeks before the start of the SEC season, college basketball season, actually. And SEC teams obviously are what matter around here. And so I went through and ranked them 1 through 16 the way I see it now, basically 2 months out from the start of the regular season. Today, we're going to talk about recruiting. I wanted to chop it up through the week. Instead of doing one long segment, do 3 long segments. And today, we're focusing on recruiting, as recruiting is heating up. At least we think it is. And it's some interesting things going on. I'm going to get into that. And I'm kind of titled this, Welcome to John Calipari's 5-Star Recruiting, because that's mostly what it is. Well, and you know, he's really zeroed in on some players. You look where Calipari and his staff went out last week. It's the players we've been talking about, players that are expected to come in and visit front and center in terms of that class of 2025 and some 2026 that Calipari went out and saw once the recruiting period opened up, was able to go on the road and do that. But once again, thank you for joining me on HogvilleNET YouTube Live. I'm Kevin McPherson. Please go hit subscribe, like, and share. If you like the content, we love putting it out. We love your help there. So let's get right into it. The first thing I want to do before I get into specifics on players, I do have some intel. We'll see how valuable some of it is. Maybe a surprise in here that you weren't expecting. But let's start with this. We've talked a lot about Arkansas's delay in the college football season of having a home game in Fayetteville. Well, that gets fixed. That's course corrected this week, and Arkansas is going to host UAB. It's really the first opportunity to have visitors in on campus to see that fan atmosphere, to go to Reynolds Razorback Stadium, see the fan atmosphere. You know, school's back. It's been back for several weeks, obviously, but now you get to, if you come for a visit this weekend, you get to see that entire experience. You get to attend basketball practice. Arkansas has had as many as 3 players that I've reported had visits set up for the weekend, and then a couple of those have moved out and into October, where some of the sexier home matchups are. Today it's Alabama-Birmingham, non-conference foe. Won't be as much excitement as some of these SEC matchups coming up in October. So having said all that, what we haven't talked about, let's go back 2 days ago when I talked about the schedule. We went through all the scheduled games in the regular season. Then I mentioned again what we already know, that Arkansas is going to host Kansas at Bud Walton Arena in an exhibition game. We've been told Dallas-Fort Worth area to play TCU in an exhibition game. We don't have dates on those yet. We haven't seen that yet. The University of Arkansas men's basketball program has not put out the schedule officially. So I've confirmed all the playing dates and opponents in the non-conference season. We know what the SEC, Arkansas League, put that out, and Arkansas did. But we still don't know the dates. We know the opponents. We don't need to know the dates for those exhibition games. Typically, they're played in the kind of the back stretch of October, moving in closer toward the start of the regular season. And so those dates can vary sometimes. Koa. Yeah, we're going to get to that here shortly. I want to set this up first. What we've talked about are all these football weekends and possibilities, and have talked, especially moving into October. What we haven't talked about is, would Arkansas try to bring in some of these high-level players in for that Kansas game in October? And when would you schedule that? Because the football team, when you play at home, do you really want to have a mega matchup? Last year, Arkansas packed the house at Bud Walton Arena for Purdue. You can, bet your bottom dollar, to say it in an old school way. That'll happen again with Kansas and Bill Self coming in. Blue blood coach versus blue blood coach. One bona fide blue blood program. Calipari says Arkansas is. I'm on board with that. Still one of the best programs of all time. So it's be a great matchup for exhibition season. We know it's going to be played at Bud Walton Arena. What do you do about some of these visitors, and when is that game going to be scheduled? Again, we haven't seen anything released. And so the more I think about that, the more I wonder, when we've seen some of these visit dates shuffle around already for some guys, we're going to get into the specifics. I now start to wonder, What are the plans for playing that game? Let's run through the football schedule real quick. You go to the first October game for Arkansas is in Fayetteville against Tennessee on October 5th. So that October 4th through 6th weekend, we've already seen one player, Malik Thomas, a 5-star, move his visit date from this weekend to that weekend. I've been reporting that for a while. I saw more reports come out confirming that yesterday. I sent another tweet out just confirming it. But that's the now the 5-star. That's his visit date weekend. Arkansas's got more visitors that are scheduled in for the next game. There's a bye week after Tennessee. Then the next game you play is back in Fayetteville at home against LSU the weekend of October 18th through the 20th. Arkansas's got a couple of visitors coming in that weekend. 5-star guys. We'll talk more about that in a little bit. But you have that open date. So that would be the weekend of October 11th through the 13th. That you could have, a Saturday or Sunday game against Kansas and maybe not have a Razorback football game to compete with, because you're going to pack the house for that basketball game, but you don't want to be distracting from football season. That's a possibility. Arkansas then is on the road after that weekend of October 18th to the 20th. They're back on the road in football. And so you've got a late October date where you could then have host Kansas on campus that weekend with no football game on campus and just try to do it at a time where the football team's not playing. Some of those game times for football aren't known until about 2 weeks out. So there's a lot of unknowns there. There's even the possibility of squeezing in a Kansas game, exhibition game, the weekend of November 1. It's a Friday through the 3rd. The regular season doesn't start until November 6th on a Wednesday at home against Lipscomb. That'd be kind of late to have an exhibition game, but we don't know exactly where Arkansas is going here in terms of getting this done with Kansas. And then how would that play into getting visitors on campus? We already know some of the dates. Now, I went through all that to get to the first player we think is coming in this weekend, Koa Pete, national top 5 rated 5-star in that 2025 class. Pete's a 6'7", 6'8" combo forward out of Arizona. He's got at least a handful of visits set up. He's taken one already at Arizona State. I think Duke and Baylor are on his list. He's already been to Houston. Arizona is set up for the final date. The Wildcats are thought to be the front runners here. There's some talk that maybe Houston's sneaky right there, maybe going to get him. I think Baylor, I think the places he's visiting or has visited are definitely serious contenders. I've said Arkansas's up there at or near the top, but I still would favor the home state school, Arizona, until some dynamic changes. And Calipari was in Arizona last week to go in and see Koa Pete at Perry High School. So we know he remains a priority. Now, I'm going to get to it. First part of intel. I don't know how reliable this information is. In terms of, I'm not going to call it a rumor, but at the same time, I haven't been able to confirm it. I have not tweeted it. Usually I tweet out changes in visits and different things that might be happening if I'm able to confirm it. I've not been able to verify this on the back end, and it's not a direct source where it's coming from. There's a middleman before it got to me, so I'm not sure about this. But I was told yesterday that Koa Pete's looking at rescheduling his Arkansas visit. So I'm not here to say that it's not going to happen. I'm not here to break news that this visit has definitely shifted and not happening this weekend. I'm just giving you some information as I got it. It's what I do. And I'm trying to clarify that I haven't been able to confirm it. Typically, when I do those things, you see me tweet about it, and that's when I feel certain about it. I do not feel certain about this. But I do consider this better than just a rumor. When I say welcome to 5-star recruiting or welcome to John Calipari's 5-star recruiting, you have to understand one thing about 5-star recruiting. Things change faster than they do typically with other recruits, even if the process may take longer. What you think you know today is sometimes shifts really quickly. If a player is going to postpone a visit, that can mean several things. I'm told not only is he considering and very likely not coming this weekend, but that he does plan to visit Arkansas. And that's why I led with what's going on with that Kansas game. When is that going to be played? And is Arkansas trying to get players on campus for an exhibition game and visit at that time? I don't know what's in the works there because I don't know a date on that yet. And we've got plenty of football weekends in October. Remember, the only one in September is this weekend. Arkansas's had as many as 3 players scheduled for this. I mentioned Malik Thomas and Koa Pete. Christinek Jr. was the other one. He moved that out to later in October. Now we've seen Malik Thomas move it to early October. Could Koa Pete be the next guy that's dipping on this weekend? And they've got something else in the works. I have a lot of thoughts on it because, John Calipari does not, to me, he's not messing around. He's not going out and wasting his time and travel expense and time going to see players that aren't really serious about Arkansas. And we know that the guys that are in the wheelhouse for these upcoming visits, and I'm going to go through all the names, Calipari was out to see in person all of these same guys last week already once. There'll be more of that, more in-home, more back on the road and doing that. But out of the gates, when the recruiting period opened up, he's been out there. So these aren't frivolous date set. They're not just so. And you see shuffling of visits. I mean, Caleb Wilson set 2 visits in September, Alabama for this weekend, and then Kentucky. Or was it Alabama last week? Maybe it was Alabama last week. Either way, he postponed that or canceled it. He's not going. It's just one example. Another target of Arkansas, another 5-star guy. So let's get through it now. If Koa Pete does, in fact, postpone this weekend, if that happens, I'm not saying that I'm sold on that. If that happens, then, you're probably looking at one of those October dates for football. Or is there something in the works to, now that Kansas game's maybe coming more into picture? We don't know about it publicly yet. I'm sure they have a date already figured out. Maybe they're trying to get some things lined up before they release that date and release the full schedule. These are speculations on my part, just trying to, dot I's, cross T's, and fill in puzzle pieces. Some of it's speculation, so I may be off on some of this. But it makes sense to me now that you've seen some more players move off of this first weekend, that opportunity in September. I'll be surprised. I'm a little bit surprised if that happens, that Arkansas is not going to maximize and get someone in. But if Calipari zeroed in on 2 or 3 guys, in addition to Darius Acuff Jr., national top 5 rated 5-star, already off the board, Arkansas, still the only top 10 rated 5-star that's committed to any school. Oh, Greg Parker, good to see you in here. Looking good, Kev. Yeah, I don't hear that much anymore, but thanks, pal. Look, so we'll see about this weekend, but and I'm not trying to be the harbinger of something and jolt everybody if in fact he still makes it. Until I confirm this, I'm still torn here. Is he coming? Maybe he's still coming, Koa Pete, but maybe the information turns out to be solid and it just hasn't, been confirmed yet. It certainly hasn't been on my part of it. All right. So that's the deal on Koa Pete, potentially still on board for this weekend, maybe a later date, giving you a little intel there. A little more intel for you. I'm told Arkansas feels good about early signing period landings of more than just Darius Acuff Jr. They feel good that by the early signing period, they'll have at minimum 2, as many as 3, maybe 3 players locked up. And that doesn't mean it has to stop there. This is information I just got in the last 48 hours. So these things, remember, it's fluid. It always is in recruiting, especially with high-level 5-star guys. There's so many programs in pursuit. There's a lot more NIL money being thrown around and talked about and negotiated. All of these things add to it. The idea that Arkansas is maybe the leader in college basketball and NIL, if that is true, and you continue to hear momentum and it gets in various places where that information comes in, maybe that's true. It doesn't mean that Arkansas is willing to go out on a certain player with a certain amount that maybe another school is. And Arkansas will maybe have a stopping point, a hard stop on how much it was. So you just got to remember that. You can maybe be the leader in NIL, but there may be limits to what you're willing to do. And so all these little things, I don't call it a shell game, but there's some intrigue there. And then for most of us who don't know all of those details, NIL details don't often splash while those things are being worked out. And even later, sometimes it's not reliable information. Sometimes it is. But either way, there's a lot at stake when you're looking at these 5-star players. And then you get a little bit nervous as a fan base when you continue to see players move visit dates. So for right now, Koa Pete publicly, the visit date is this weekend, September 13th, 15th. Maybe he's moving that. I've just brought to you a little information on that. Maybe that's being postponed. Or maybe he makes it. So we're going to follow up on that. If you follow me on Twitter, as soon as I know for certain, I'm going to put something out. Over at HogvilleNET, I'll do the same. But moving along here, let's just say for now, let's table Koa Pete. Let's move into the others. I mentioned Malik Thomas, the 6'4" guard out of Pittsburgh, top 10 rated 5-star guard. That's, had a visit scheduled for Arkansas in late June. Right off the heels of his UConn visit, he reached out to me and said, look, I'm going to have to postpone it. We then wondered, is this really a postponement? Is it a cancellation? He's going to commit to Duke. To UConn, where he had just visited. A lot of momentum and a lot of projections out there nationally that he's about to get it done with UConn. Hasn't happened yet. UConn may very well still be up there. I think Arkansas, I've got one source that thinks when the dust settles on his visits, Arkansas is going to get Malik Thomas. I've got others that are not so sure. Right now, he still has a schedule visited to Alabama at the end of September. That September, I think I mentioned it, the end of September, and now the Arkansas visit early October. I mentioned that October 4th through 6th. So I've been talking about that for a while, that visit date might be changing. I tweeted it a couple of days ago, confirmed it yesterday, tweeted that out. So that one looks, unless he postpones or changes again or never makes it, you've now had a 5-star player set 2 dates to Arkansas, and those have shifted each time. And so, again, there are a lot of high stakes in this level of recruiting, and John Calipari, to me, it remains the best at it. But don't be surprised by these things, and don't be concerned. Again, Calipari putting his focus on certain players. Was out to see Malik Thomas last week. I mentioned Koa Pete, 2 players who had visits set up. At least one of those we know now have confirmed is moved. Maybe Koa Pete is. Let's move down the list a little bit. All right, October 4th through 6th, Arkansas hosts Tennessee in football. That's now when we're told Malik Thomas will visit. Let's just move later into October. I mentioned that off date for the football team is the following weekend, October 11th through the 13th. Does Arkansas try to get that Kansas exhibition game, charity exhibition game, played that early in October? Basically, kind of getting close to mid-October. Can they get it done then and not have football to compete with at all, road or home, and pack the place and have all the focus on the basketball program? That would be great. Could you have visitors in then? The following weekend is October 18th to the 20th. Arkansas has 2 visitors scheduled for that weekend, 2 5-star visitors. When we look at Chris Sinak Jr., initially scheduled for September 13th, 15th, this upcoming weekend. That never got out publicly. I reported it. It has moved. I always said he wanted to visit Arkansas. LSU may be the leader there. Kentucky's up there. Don't sleep on Calipari in Arkansas in this situation. Do not. And the fact that he has now, he does have a visit set for Arkansas that late October week. Well, you could still call it mid to late, the 18th through the 20th. Arkansas that weekend on the 19th hosts LSU in football. Chris Sinak Jr. will be on campus, class of 2025. 6'10", top 10 rated 5-star. Versatile forward, can help you at the center. I think he'll be a 4-5 guy at the college level. But someone, again, that you're talking about, another top 10 rated 5-star that's not only Calipari is in hot pursuit of, but he's going to be on campus. At least it's scheduled so far. Class of 2026, J.J. Andrews, 6'7" wing, Little Rock Christian Academy. He's put this out a while back. Very versatile guy, top 15 according to ESPN. Again, a 5-star. He has Arkansas scheduled for an official visit. He'll be there that same weekend as Chris Sinak Jr., October 10th through the 18th. The LSU football game. Andrews also has visits set up to Missouri, to North Carolina State, and to LSU. LSU, a later visit date, I believe, after he's on. I'm not sure of the order right now. I've got that jumbled up in my head. But those are the 4 teams that he's got scheduled so far. The one name I left out, and I'm going to go back to, because Arkansas could still have a September visitor when there is no football game, and I don't anticipate an exhibition game. I kind of want to get through the ones that are going to be in on weekends where there's definitely a lot going on. But let's jump back now to September. The weekend after this upcoming weekend, the 13th through the 15th. Next weekend, Arkansas's back away from home, be on the road at Auburn for a football game. But scheduled to come in that weekend is another top 10 rated 5-star from the 2026 class, Mika Murnin from Finland, a 17-year-old on the Finnish national team. When you look at international play, but Mika Murnin, top 10 rated 5-star, 6'11". I call him a stretch 4. Played with J.J. Andrews, who I just talked about, on Brad Bill Elite's Nike E16, 16 and under Peach Jam Championship team, and he was the MVP. He has been a fast stock riser, chart riser, had a really good July, and it's enabled him to move up in the top 10 of the 2026 rankings, hovering around, top 5 or 6 there. But Muranen has scheduled an official visit to Arkansas the weekend that Arkansas is on the road for football at Auburn, September 20th through the 22nd. So that weekend he's scheduled to come in. Why this is important, just in addition to being a top 10 rated 5-star, is the fact that he is also a strong candidate, I'm told, quote unquote, strong candidate to reclass to 2025. And again, you've got your early signing periods in mid-November, and you've got plenty of visit opportunities. We just went through a lot of them. The name I have left out here, and I'm going to get into this now, is Caleb Wilson. I've told you guys, class 2025, 5-star player, 6'9" combo forward out of the Atlanta area, that he has a scheduled visit for Arkansas beyond September. And I said, start paying attention to October dates. And I have not been able to share more than that. Now, look, Calipari was out to see him. That was the first player he saw on Wednesday in Atlanta last week. That was the first day of the new recruiting period that runs basically through April, with just a few little blocks of dead period where you can't have any on or off campus visits. But he was the first player that Calipari and associate head coach Jen Coleman went out to see in Atlanta at Holy Innocents. So there's been, since he's joined up, I've given some information on this, and I'm going to give you a little bit more intel. I've given you intel about someone's close to his dad who's really driving things in this situation. I said it was someone in his camp that was, a decision maker. It's his dad. But we talked about the fact that he's always spoke highly of Calipari. And even when other schools come up and their coaches and their situation, always kind of came back to Calipari. Then I got into the facts that a lot of the information we had was through mid-July, which is exactly the time where he teamed up with Clutch Sports and the agency run by Rich Paul. Everybody knows that. And that there might, what kind of friction is there truly between Rich Paul and Calipari? I don't want to start flames and fire where there may not be one, but he kind of called Cal out over the Chris Livingston situation and how that played out with the NBA draft. So I don't want to spend a lot of time on that, but a couple of people familiar with that, with a process, with agents, players, one directly with Rich Paul, told me that could potentially be a stumbling point with players that Calipari's recruiting that are in that Clutch agency and being represented by it. Maybe, maybe not, but they thought maybe. They said keep an eye on it. I have since I lied, and so I'm repeating some things I already told you and shared with you. Here's the new part that's maybe a little bit of intel for you. I've since talked to another agent with an NBA agent with an agency that's a competitor, and they told me they did not think that dynamic would play into recruitment of Caleb Wilson or anybody else that Clutch would represent. They didn't think that probably would factor in, but they weren't sure, but they didn't think that it would. Now, having said that, when you look at Calipari in Atlanta, you also had some in-home visits, and I did not see any information where Calipari did one. Doesn't mean that he didn't do it, but North Carolina, Hubert Davis, I think BYU was in the house with Caleb Wilson. You're seeing a lot of momentum from North Carolina, even Kentucky's name thrown in there. So there's some other stuff. I have told, weeks ago back in mid-July, even since then, I have said I believe Arkansas is still the leader. I'm at worst case scenario right now, I'd say Arkansas is among the top 2 or 3 leaders, but I do think some dynamics may be shifting in terms of being more open to other options. And maybe Arkansas is not as entrenched as a leader as it was. That sounds like a lot of word salad, but the more information you get, recruiting changes, it's fluid. I still like Arkansas's chances with Caleb Wilson, and we still don't have a public visit date announcement for him yet for Arkansas. And he is set to visit Kentucky again. He either postponed or canceled that Alabama visit for this month, and that you really haven't seen anything with Caleb Wilson on terms of scheduled visit dates beyond September. So keep an eye on that. And again, I still feel good about Arkansas's chances with him. Once upon a time, I said if the season ended today, or if the recruiting had to be decided today for him, I think Arkansas was getting him. I've had more than one source tell me that Arkansas is in the lead there. I'm not so far off of that as much as I am. Keep an eye on some of these other developments with some other teams. And I think Rich Paul, it's his job to get other options in front of his player and use connections to help him maximize whatever his situation is going to be. So you can't hate on that. And again, I'm not letting go of the idea that Arkansas, if not fully in the lead, is still among the top 2 or 3 there. I'm still there with that. All right, so we try to, kind of swing through some things. I think one of the biggest takeaways is Arkansas, I'm told, feels really good that by the early signing period, they're going to have a minimum of 2, probably 3. And again, if you can expand on that with this class, I think it's one of the most loaded classes in recent memory, especially in the top 10 to 15. There's some guys that are ranked in the mid to late 20s that I really like. Caden Lewis, Sean Abayev. There's some other ones. So this is a deep, strong class. It's really good at the top. The Owasso, Jalen Montnati. Yeah, I mean, supposedly I've heard that Arkansas may be coming in to see him. That doesn't surprise me. Arkansas is going to be at Link to see Chris Sinek Jr., I'm sure, soon. Some of this stuff may be playing out, and we haven't seen it reported, haven't come out from the – a lot of times the schools release thank yous, and their players will. And so we're still trying to track some of that down and when some of that's going to happen. Is Mika going to reclass? Well, he's from Finland. I think they said the French Cooper flag. I don't know if there's French in there, but I'm told he's from Finland. That's what I've read. And look, he's a strong candidate to reclass. Sometimes these guys go ahead and pull the trigger and do it. Sometimes they talk about it, they're considering it, and then they don't do it. I would say, if the way it's framed to me, he's a strong candidate to reclass. That's almost verbatim quote what I was told. So, we'll just have to pay attention to that and keep an eye on it and see where it goes. But certainly Calipari was at Arizona Compass Prep to see him and Jacob Lanier last week, both 2026 as it stands. And he's got that visit scheduled to Arkansas. Again, we're seeing a lot of these visit dates changed, flipped. You may have plans to play, bring players in for an exhibition game against Kansas or some of these football games, but they're also visiting other schools and being recruited by other places. And you just may have to settle on and settle for weekends that work into their schedule. Calipari does a great job of balancing what he wants to get done while getting full buy-in from families, players. I mean, he's just he's an artist when it comes to recruiting, one of the best ever. I don't know who your favorite artist is out there. It may be a weird analogy, but I mean, the guy's a Picasso. I don't know. I don't know what the analogy is there, but he seems to thread needles in terms of balancing what he needs to get done and making sure that families and players feel like they're part of that process and not being, driven all the time. He's done a great job of getting players on board in early signing periods too. Not that it always plays out that way, but he does a really good job with it. All right, we're nearly 28 minutes in. We ran through a lot. It does get a little confusing and convoluted just because visit dates change. You hear different things. Going back to the big storyline, I guess since there's an immediacy, or I don't even know if the urgency with the first weekend that Arkansas could host visitors with a fan base going to and attending a sporting event where players could actually soak that up, is this weekend. Alabama, Birmingham, the first home game in Fayetteville for the football team. And you had multiple visitors set to come in, and now you may have none, or you may have a surprise that I don't even know about at this moment. It may be Coapete is still on board for this weekend. Again, I've got one source that just reached out and said, "Hey, I just want to inform you this is what I got. I think it might be reliable. I think but I haven't been able to confirm it, and it's not one of my typical source streams. And so I'm with a grain of salt. I bring it. Again, I haven't tweeted it out. I won't go that far unless I've been able to firm something up. We're at 29 minutes. I'm going to cut this one off at 30. I'm going to do everyone a favor. I've done a lot of talking the last 2 days on these segments. I appreciate you for joining me on HogvilleNET YouTube Live. We always do. Once again, a request. Go please hit subscribe, like, and if you haven't done that already, and then share if you can, share the content. We got a lot more to talk about. If there's breaking news, anything that happens, we're going to jump back on here. I've already done the schedule, my schedule, I guess, show 2 days ago, running through all 31 matchups, ranking the top 20, went through the reasons why. But you know what? We're going to have more to talk about when these exhibition games get scheduled. And we'll see if there's any last-minute surprise where someone bought a team out of a contract in the regular season and we have something else shaking in that 31 games. That's not going to happen, but Maybe, you never know. But the exhibition games now become a focus, and we're going to talk about Kansas and TCU when we know more about those dates. We'll spend some time on that. Anything that's breaking recruiting, we're going to jump back on here. We just rolled 30 minutes. Until next time, thank you for being here, and I'll see you then.